Starting as usual with a question that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. When one has such an open heart, how does one protect oneself, love oneself, and also maintain boundaries at the same time? How do we balance divine love with the human physical need and longing for a romantic partner when the ideal is to love without expectation and attachment? So last night we were talking about the need for a companion. Someone had asked, do we need a companion in life? I've had bad experiences. Do we need one? And tonight we shift into a kind of expanded version of that, a deepening version of that, because I had spoken last night about, yes, you need connection, but ultimately the connection is with God. And even if you've got a companion, a spouse, a partner, nonetheless, that partner should bring about a connection with God. So tonight we go into the layer deeper of that, which is, if I've got that connection with God, or I'm working on that connection with God, if bhakti is a part of my path, a deep part of my path, how do I also bring in actual human relationship? Like, is it enough to just have bhakti? And if within bhakti, for the divine, there's also a sense of yearning for that connection with a human being, how do we deal with that? So we remember that ultimately, the highest, deepest goal of our life, purpose of our life, is experiencing oneness with God. Like, that's why we're here. Nobody is put on earth with the explicit duty of, you must fulfill this particular career. You must become a CEO of this, or a president of that, or the inventor of this, or the billionaire of that, or chairman over here. And similarly, we're not put onto this earth with a sense of, you must become the companion of this one, or the husband of this one, or the spouse of this one. These are all different aspects of ways in which we fulfill our karmic journey. They're all different threads in the tapestry of our karmic journey. But ultimately, the deepest, highest, truest reason we're here is to wake up into the truth of our own divinity. That two becomes one in the experience with the divine, the awareness that I am one with God. Now, where does relationship fall in with that? If I'm on that path, where does my relationships fall in, my marriage fall in? So it falls in a couple of places. First of all, for some, as we were talking last night, it's not necessary. Those are the ones with the dharma to be monastic. The sannyasis, the monks, the nuns, those for whom the connection is just with the divine. And then there's the vast majority of others for whom their dharma really is meant to be unfolded in relationship. And so there's two main ways that relationship becomes part of our core deep dharma rather than just drama. Usually relationships are drama. The question is how to make it dharma rather than drama. So on the most basic level, it becomes dharma when we are quite literally fulfilling the grest ashram phase of our life. The householder phase, we get married, we have children, we have careers, we contribute to society, we raise children with values and ethics and connection to spirit, sort of doing our part to serve the world through giving them beautiful beings for the next generation. But on a really deep spiritual path, for those who are really deeply spiritually anchored and grounded and drenched in a way in the ocean of spirituality, the partnership itself becomes a way to experience the divine. Through that loved one, you connect with the divine. Now, that's really tricky because, of course, the loved one is a human. They're going to be stressed out sometimes. They're going to be in a rush sometimes. They're going to say things sometimes that they shouldn't have said. They're not always going to live up to the standards of the deity you are worshiping in your temple. And so connecting to God through them doesn't mean holding them up to the standards of the God we worship in our temples. But what it means is seeing them with the eyes of devotion. And you know, it's really beautiful. I was talking about this somewhere recently, how we've been given all of these different manifestations of the divine in the Hindu tradition. We've got all of these divine incarnations ranging from, not limited to, but ranging from Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, Hanumanji, Ganeshji, Bhagwan Shiva. We've got all of these aspects of, avatars of, and I'm not going to go into the theological differences here, but point being, each of them in form has their own characteristics. So Krishna, when he was younger, is referred to all the time as being mischievous and naughty. And, you know, he's the one kind of playing his games and his tricks on his mom and the gopis and their mothers and all of the other kind of milkmaids to steal what he wants. And then we've got Bhagwan Ram, for whom the idea of playing a trick on someone or stealing something is just as antithetical to the core of who he is as you could imagine. We've got all of these different embodiments with different personalities, you could say. And I actually think it's to give us ways of connecting to the divine through our loved ones, regardless of what they're like. So if our child is just annoying us to no end, but we're just trying to see them as divine beings, We can say, oh, look, you're being like Krishna. This is what Krishna did. And we can start to see them as Krishna. If we've got a loved one who we may see as a little bit too kind of stuck in his ways of doing things or what he thinks is right, maybe we want to be a little bit more flexible, you could say. Adventurous, mischievous even, you could say. We have this epitome of Dharma in Bhagwan Ram. We could sort of assume, here I am married to Bhagwan Ram, he won't even waver an inch here or there from his path of righteousness. And we're given these different stories and different personalities, I think, so that, for one of the reasons, so that as we're on a path of seeing the divine in our loved one, we've got all of these beautiful and wonderful examples to be able to say, oh, you are being just like, and to pull a divine example out of our mind to help us remember that this being, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a child, is actually the divine. And that our opportunity is to see the divine in them. So, if divine love and bhakti is your path, don't stop your meditative practices, don't stop your devotional practices and put 100% of that energy into your partner. But allow your partnership to also be an aspect of your bhakti. It shouldn't be separate. It shouldn't be, here's my devotion over here, and then my marriage over here. You should be able to weave your partnership into your devotional practice and to see that loved one as an embodiment of the divine. Not that it means that everything that he or she does is perfect. And again, we've got these examples that we're given of when God gets naughty, right? When God plays tricks, when God is mischievous, when God is annoying to his parents. And to be able to just see the divine in the loved one like that. Wherever you look, in the partner and everywhere. I mean, that's ultimately the highest form of bhakti, is to actually see God in all. There's this beautiful poem by a very famous poet named Namdevji, and I have to learn the poem in Hindi because it works a lot better in Hindi than it does in English. But it's a beautiful poem about the poet is making chapatis. And this dog comes up and steals a chapati and runs away with it. And the poet essentially calls after it, "Oh God, you've appeared before me today in the form of this dog who has stolen my chapati and run away." And the poet runs after the dog with a bowl of ghee, saying, "Don't eat it dry, let me put some ghee on it. You've appeared in this beautiful form of a dog, at least for God's sakes, take the ghee on your chapati." And it's such a beautiful, beautiful poem and teaching of bhakti yoga, of real divine love. When you are in love with God, even a random dog comes up and steals your chapati. And where most of us would just yell or, curse the dog, or at most say, oh, and go back to our rolling of chapatis. The true devotee sees this was God who came and runs down the street following the dog with a bowl of ghee to make the chapati taste better. So it teaches us that when we're really on the path of bhakti, not only our romantic partner, our spouse, but every being we interact with becomes a reflection of that divine and another opportunity to be in love with God. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you. The question of yesterday wasn't very clear because of my English, so I prefer to read it.
Sure, you can read it, no problem.
For me, it is the very idea of God that I don't understand. Because in my opinion, God and religion have been created by man for man to achieve happiness, peace, answer question of which we have no answer, such as what will be after that. It seems easy to me to find the answer in a God. Also, it seems limiting to me to behave well just because there is a God or a reincarnation or a reward. It will be a beautiful thing, but I'm not able to believe it. As I said yesterday, I believe in universal energy. I also like spirituality and spiritual teaching, but it's hard for me to accept the idea of God. So how can I believe in...
How can you believe in God?
By the way, sorry,
Yeah.
It's our last day here, and so thank you for everything, for your teaching.
Of course. Well, hopefully we can send you home with some ways of believing. So here's the first important part. As my guru Pujya Sadhviji always says, don't worry if you don't believe in God. God believes in you. But you said, I believe in universal energy, and I believe in spirituality. Now, spirituality itself, the very definition of spirituality means pertaining to spirit, of spirit. Now, there's two aspects to us. There's that which is always changing, the physical aspect of who we are, both the matter and the energy, the particles and the waves. So everything ranging from my actual bones and muscles to the electricity that is coursing down the axons of my neurons, making my whole nervous system happen. It's energy and it's matter. But they're both part of what we would call the physical body. Constantly changing. Born, change, die. Okay. That is in short, pathway of what happens to the physical body. But then you've got an aspect that doesn't change. And that's what we call spirit. If you believe in universal energy, well, that universal energy is that which is unchanging, right? When you see a volcano erupt, for example, you see lava come up out of the ground. I was in Iceland this summer in August, and for the first time ever actually stood right over a volcano that was erupting, and it was one of the most powerful moments of my life to just see the earth literally open and spew her energy into the air. But it's clear when you see that what we're seeing is not what I would call an unchanging spirit. We see something that is part of nature. Things are like human beings. Things are born, they die. A tree sprouts, it grows, it gives fruit. Year after year, eventually the tree dies. Okay? It's the nature of nature. The volcano erupts, the lava pours out, eventually the lava hardens into lava rocks, eventually the volcano stops erupting. Change, constant change. When we talk about a universal energy, there is an understanding that what we're talking about is something that is much more eternal than simply a volcano erupting or a tree growing and then dying. What we're talking about is what we call spirit. It flows through you, it flows through me. You could chop off my arm, it would still flow through me. You could chop off my other arm, it would still flow through me. You could chop off my legs, it would still flow through me. You could chop off every bit of me and it wouldn't touch the spirit or the universal energy that was flowing through me. Right? You believe all of this, right? I'm using your words, okay? When you believe in that, this is what we mean by God. God doesn't necessarily mean some old man with a long white beard sitting somewhere off in heaven who is watching you and punishing you for your mistakes and rewarding you for your good deeds. You know, a lot of us, especially Western religious traditions, have this sense of kind of an old man, long white beard, a staff, somewhere watching us. Well, that's certainly one way of thinking about God. God is infinite. There's no reason God couldn't also be an old man with a long beard, because it's infinite energy. So there's infinite possibilities. But God isn't only that. There's an infinite number of other ways of connecting to, conceiving of the divine. It's like water is flowing. Now, one form of water is the water in this glass. Not because the water has the form, but because it has flown into a glass that has form. So it's taken the form of this glass. As the divine energy is in different forms, we can experience that divine in different ways. Different religions have different ways of understanding this. But you don't have to necessarily buy into any of them. It doesn't matter. As long as you understand this universal energy that you talk about, this concept of spirit, that there really ultimately is no place you end and I begin. The world of material vision says you are over there, I am over here, there is empty space between us. Spirituality says you are spirit, I am spirit. There is no empty space between us. There is no place you end and I begin. We are interwoven. We are connected. you feel people's energy. Right? Even when we just say things like, oh, I got really bad vibes from that person. Or that person's got a really good energy. What does that mean? We're able to feel it. Even when you don't touch them. I can only feel your bones and muscles if I touch you. Can't feel them from over here. But when we talk about your energy, what is that? On some level, my spirit is connecting to your spirit. And it's a lot deeper than good vibes and bad vibes, of course, but we're connecting on a very deep level. Because there is no place that we are separate. That is spirituality. Do you have a name for the divine? Great. Chances are you subscribe to a religious tradition in that case. Do you not have a name for the divine? No problem. You don't need to subscribe to an organized religious tradition in order to be spiritual. You just have to recognize that there is more to you than your bones and your muscles and your blood and the electricity running down your neurons. Something that doesn't change, something that isn't separate from the trees, from the sunrise, from the sunsets, from other beings. That's the divine in you. Because your body's going to die. In the same way that it keeps changing now, eventually it's going to change to ash. What is it that stays? Spirit. Soul. Divinity. Doesn't matter what word you use. That's a way of conceiving and understanding of God. So connect in that way. Connect to that powerful energy that exists. Use whatever word you want, it doesn't matter. Just because religious traditions for thousands and thousands of years have operationalized God to run societies, to keep people in line, to scare people, to give them ways of understanding things. Just because God has been operationalized doesn't mean God doesn't exist. You may not buy into the way that organizations have operationalized God in religion. But don't discount the presence of God just because of that. Beautiful. Yes.
There's a lot of talk about self-love, and especially in relationships, needing to feel full and whole and complete yourself before you expect someone else to fulfill your needs. And that's on quite like I would say, a more mundane level than bhakti and divine love.
Yes.
How do you pour love that you might feel for God into yourself, which is a weird concept to me, really, but actually that's quite necessary in a way, but without it getting confused with the ego or with...
Great. Self-love. How do you pour, and I'm quoting her here, how do you pour love that you could be giving to God into yourself? That you have self-love? And what is the felt sense experience of self-love? So, first of all, there's no finite amount of love. It's not that I've got a pie of love, and if I give this big piece to myself, there is less to give to God or to others. See, you don't have kids yet, but ask any parent, does loving one child this much prevent you from loving another child this much? I mean, do you have a pie of love and you give this piece to one child and therefore you've got this much you have to divide amongst the others? It's not like an apple pie at dinner that you have to divide. There's an infinite amount of love, and interestingly, the more you give to yourself, the more you actually have to love God and to love others. Because the worse I feel about myself, the more I berate myself. You are stupid. You are worthless. You are this. You are that. You are lazy. You are judgmental. You are too full of anger. You are full of ego. That takes a lot of energy. Takes a lot of my mental energy. Drains me. Takes up time. Because I actually can only think of one thing at a time. It's a little known fact of the mind. We can't actually think of 1,000 things simultaneously. We can move quickly. But at any given moment, you can actually only be having one thought at a time. And if my thought is, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Or, how are you going to handle this? Or, oh, you were such a schmuck about that. I cannot simultaneously be loving God, loving anyone else. So actually ending that negative self-talk and bringing love to the self opens up a channel of the flow of love that then enables me to love God. And it actually goes in both directions. The more I love God, the more I love myself. The more I love myself, the more I love God. So it's, for me, on a personal level, the internal self-talk could go something like this. First with God, for example, if it begins in that. Maybe something has inspired my gratitude, and it's, oh, thank you so much. Oh, my God. I am so blessed. You have blessed me so much. What an amazing, amazing being I am. Wow, God, look at this. You've given me these incredible opportunities, these incredible abilities. Wow, thank you. Like, you see how it begins in love and gratitude to God that flows so seamlessly into an awareness of the fullness of your own self. Or it could begin with the self. Wow. I handled that so well. I was so calm. I felt such love for that person and compassion for that person. God, thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for being with me in that moment. You are so all compassionate. You are so all loving. You are so all merciful. Look at that. Look at how you were with me. When I thought I was going to get angry and I didn't get angry. And so you could begin in either place. And they actually flow very easily into each other. Now, self-love has two aspects to it, and they're both important. But the distinction is also important. One is self-love of the lowercase s self. That's my ego self. And love of that self sounds something like this. You know, you're doing your best, sweetheart. It's okay. Yeah, I know you said something stupid. It's all right. You were stressed out. He really pushed your buttons. You weren't expecting that. You were triggered. You were triggered because you really wanted your boss in that moment to listen to you, to appreciate you, to see you. But this guy stepped in, stole all the credit for your work. Yeah, you insulted him. You shouldn't have. But it's okay. It's okay. You were triggered. You're still a good person. You're a divine person. It's okay. Let's have some compassion and understanding. And next time we'll just breathe a little bit more. Next time we'll recite our mantra a little bit more. It's okay. So there's self-love on the level of the lowercase s self-ego. That's giving our ego self compassion, understanding. That's there like a best friend would be. To be honest, make a mistake, you got to be honest about that. But not you are a mistake. That really helps you understand the fullness of yourself. And then there is self-love, which is the capital S self. And that's love of the divine in you. And that's the place where, with bhakti, it flows so easily because you are not separate from God. If you really love God, then it's going to be, in the same way that Namdevji runs after the dog with a katordi of ghee, able to see God in the form of this dog, that you are also able to see God in yourself. Not only in the supreme Paramatma aspect of you, but in your Jivatma and in the way that your Jivatma is here on earth, going through your karmic journey. And to have love and to have compassion for all of that and to honor that. To really honor all of that. So self-love feels like bhakti turned inward. And it's not instead of loving God. It's loving the presence of God in you. And they come together. And yeah, sometimes you have to act as if, because it's really hard to just jump into that. For some people it sounds really corny, like some people just cannot wrap their brains around getting into that even. For some it feels really selfish, it feels really egotistical. And you've got to just stay with it. And just start to really practice it. And if you find it's really difficult, then you might want to start asking yourself questions like, and why do I think the entire world is worthy of my love except myself? Why am I prepared to give love to every starving child, every person, every tree, every this, every that? Wherever I am focusing my energies of compassion, why do I think the tree is worthy of my love and I'm not? Or this child is worthy of my love and I'm not? Where did I get this mistaken belief that somehow all of creation is divine and therefore worthy of my love except me? Because that's a really interesting question. And a lot of us suffer from that. And so it's important to be able to break through that And yeah, if it feels hokey, let it feel hokey. That's okay. You don't have to speak it out loud. Nobody knows. It's between you and yourself and you. But start to let it blossom in you. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give to both your lowercase s self and your capital S self. Because if you can't love yourself, how are you going to realize it? Talk about self-realization. If I'm not prepared to give time and energy and love to myself, how can I realize it? How can you actually know anything that you're not prepared to give energy of yourself to? So we just start. And yeah, it feels corny, it feels hokey, and you just go through it. You keep doing it. And eventually it becomes very normal and very natural and very beautiful. So she's asking, does that then help you create boundaries and discern in life? Well, sure, because if I love myself, I stop acting like a doormat. If I love myself, I value myself, I respect myself. And I start seeing the divine in myself. And so I recognize that there is a value to me as a being, to my time, to my energy, to my love. And so, yeah, I start protecting it. Absolutely. In the same way that if you build a temple in your home, for example, you're gonna take care of it. And it's not that every random person and their random kids who come through your home, you're gonna let kind of go over to your temple area and, start playing with it. And if somebody's in your house and they're drunk and they want to go over to your temple and start picking up your deities, you're gonna be like, could you kind of move your drunkenness over here in this other direction? Because there's just an intuitive sense, an instinct of you want to keep the sacredness of that energy. Even though, of course, being touched by a drunken person isn't going to change the power of the temple in your home, but your heart instinctively wants to protect the energy of it. Somebody comes over with their rowdy, obnoxious kids who want to go over and, pick up your deities. You're going to say, hey, control your kid. Keep your hands off my temple. Because you understand. There's something worth protecting in that energy. And as you start to see yourself as divine, you're going to start to protect your energy. You're going to start to value it. And so you're going to, yes, share love and share compassion in the places, with the people, in the ways in which it's appropriate. But you're not going to be a doormat for the world. A lot of people think that spirituality somehow makes you weak in some way, but it doesn't. It actually makes you quite strong. Because with the clarity of being able to see, we move through the world with intelligence and wisdom and discrimination and care. So yeah, you become very, very able to discern and to bring up whatever energy is required at that moment. I'll conclude with one of my favorite stories. It's not just about boundaries. It's even on a farther level. It's a story about Pujya Swamiji, who, as those of you who know him closely know, and even those of you who have just seen him in Aarti can sense, he has the most gentle, compassionate, like he's, even in a male body, his energy is divine mother much more than anything else. And many years ago, we were in Pittsburgh, in America, where back in the early 80s, he had built the world's first Hindu Jain temple. And there's a very large community there, and he loves the community. And so whenever he's in America, we spend some time there. And there's this beautiful woodsy area around the temple that he built. And we love to go and take walks there in the evening. And whoever happens to be sitting in satsang, in darshan at that time, will say, we're going for a walk, would you like to? Come. So one evening, one young woman came. Her father was there, he didn't want to come, but she came. She was maybe, I don't know, late teens, early 20s. So we're walking, the three of us, through kind of a woodsy park area. And you can hear in the distance this dog barking. But he was far. Maybe a good 200 feet. And he's got his owner, and he's on a leash, but the dog is barking. And as we start to turn along a path that's actually walking away from where the dog was, the barks get louder and louder and louder. And I turn around, and this dog has broken away from his owner and is charging at us really fast, barking really loudly, like this was a not happy situation about to happen. And we're in the middle of, essentially, the woods. And the owner is yelling at it, calling its name, running after it, but the dog is charging straight ahead right at us. As it gets closer, you can see its teeth. I mean, this dog was on the verge of attacking. So in a moment that not only shows what being really anchored and grounded in your own spiritual energy does, but also in a very interesting moment about roles. So remember, this woman was late teens, early 20s, fully grown, an adult woman. I was probably in my 30s at that point. And she and I instinctively grab each other and start to scream. Not a moment I'm particularly proud of, but it was just somehow this very traditional sort of female thing. We both went, ah! And as though somehow hugging each other was gonna, stop the dog. Pujya Swamiji turns around and goes, huh, to the dog. One sound of such energy. And the dog goes, and I mean, the dog was like where this tripod is. It had gotten that close to us and was just on the verge of essentially leaping onto one of us to take a very large chunk out of one of our bodies. And just, and the dog goes, and just started to cower and kind of fell back down on its rear end. And it was the most, I've never seen him do anything like that since. I had never seen him do anything like that up until that moment. But the presence of that energy, that which is needed when it is needed, is right there. So he who gives to all the time, it's this energy of like just yes, 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 yes to whatever, whomever it may be. Well, suddenly there needs to be an energy of a very strong boundary, like you and I are separate. Boundary. There it is. in such a powerful way that the dog got it. So the more in tune we are with that energy of ourself, yeah, it absolutely helps us to discern and create boundaries, even to the level of stopping a charging dog in its tracks when you have the capacity to harness and channel it in that way. So yeah, it'll serve you well. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings, everyone. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world through this beautiful gift of technology. And I look so forward to